What's up, queens? Welcome to the Female Dating Strategy Podcast, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm Ro.
And I'm Savannah. And we're back here again.
One more time. You know what? Let me just slide to the side real quick and just make mention, because I know people are already going to complain about this episode. I don't care. I like Love is Blind. I like dissecting the couples on this. I know some of you don't watch reality TV. And every time we post this episode, people make comments, well, I don't want to talk about this because I don't watch reality TV. Well, that's you. It's the number one show on Netflix every time it comes out. It's trending on Twitter. People are talking about it.
And also, we get a ton of requests from people asking us to cover this episode. So, yeah, we do try to cater for as many people as possible. But yes, if you are one of those people who are not into reality TV, that is fine. Skip this episode.
Feel free to skip it. That's what I do. When I listen to podcasts, sometimes there's episodes I don't like, so I just skip it.
Even on this podcast, there's sometimes we talk about things I'm not that interested in. I just suck it up.
Fair.
Like Ro's voice. Joking.
Normal, healthy response to something.
Joking.
Okay. So, yes, we're talking about the show that we all love to hate, Love is Blind, Seattle.
Oh, Seattle. Oh, man. I was so reluctant to watch this show because I wasn't over the fuckery in the last season, what with SK and Raven and all the characters. But I remember all my friends were like, have you seen Love is Blind? Even ones who didn't normally watch Love is Blind, because I sort of introduced them to it. They're like, have you watched it? And I was like, I'm not really ready for the fuckery. And I wasn't ready for the fuckery for this season.
Yeah, this show is very much an emotional roller coaster. I find myself actually getting sucked into it. And I think it's because, for the most part, these are regular people. There's a few clout chasers on here, but for the most part, you actually feel like you know some character of these people in your own life.
Yeah, or you can see yourself in some of the characters, for sure.
Very true. Also that. I actually think this is one of the better seasons. I mean, I thought season 2 and season 3 were like complete dumpster fires with a bunch of irredeemable characters. But this one... Okay, so it was also still a dumpster fire with a couple of irredeemable characters. But it was like, I guess, you know what? You know who saved it? Okay, all right, let's just go ahead and say it. Our first couple we're going to talk about, Brett and Tiffany.
Aww.
I think they were just so adorably cute.
Yeah, and individually, they're also really great people. I was talking to my sister prior to recording, and we were just talking about how, like, Brett is not just a good partner, but he seems to be a really, really mature friend. By the way, this episode is going to contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen most of the season, again, you might want to skip it because we're going to talk spoilers. But the way he handled Jackie not showing up to her wedding dress fitting and the way he treated Marshall, I thought that was also a really, really solid friend. Because having to be the person to deliver that news must be really difficult. And he did it in a way that conveyed the message, but also gave Marshall the space to react how he wanted. He wasn't like, she's a fucking bitch, she's a prick, oh my gosh. You know, he relayed quite a difficult message, a message that he knew his friend would find distressing, and he gave his friend the space to deal with that. And I really respect that. He wasn't just trying to like basically shit stir or anything like that. It's completely different do you remember when was it Matt and Zenab in the last season when they were like hyping each other up to go blow up with their partners? And they were in like the box. They were in like the boxing corner massaging each other's shoulders to go like beat up their partner.
Just fanning each other's flames like, yeah, they shouldn't talk to you like that. Oh my God. You know, yeah, that was a completely different way to handle that kind of conflict. So yeah, you can see that he's got a much more cool head on his shoulders compared to a lot of the other men on Love is Blind. And I think his story was pretty interesting because he's a guy that obviously had a lot of struggles in life, had a big tragedy happen with the passing of his brother. And I think admittedly, he probably is not the type of man that a lot of women would have looked at least women that he would want to date, maybe, who are also similarly business professionals, because he doesn't have a college degree and he basically worked his way up and lucked out at a design director job at a very large shoe retailer. So I think It's kind of an interesting thing. Like he's sort of a diamond in the rough type character, right? He's quite atypical for someone of his background to have found a way to make something of himself despite coming from a lot of poverty, despite coming from a lot of tragedy. And I think that's a really admirable quality in an individual. I think it speaks a lot to the strength of their character, their curiosity, their drive. And he seems to be genuinely a good person. And his friends seem to be good people, right? They don't seem weird. They seem like very supportive of him. And I think contrast his friend group to like Bartice's friend group from last season.
Yeah.
Actually, they weren't even medium ugly. They're just regular ugly dudes who had the nerve to talk down on Nancy's looks, which was pretty audacious of them. You didn't see any of that with Brett's friend group. So quite a departure from some of the like raggedy pieces of men that some of the former contestants of Love is Blind have surrounded themselves with. I think Jarrett is another one that had a really raggedy friend group, like just pathetic fuckboys. So
I do think you can tell a lot about a man by his friends. Like if his friends are all waste men, the guy's a waste man. Don't sit there thinking like, oh, he's different. Nah, like birds of a feather. As we'll get to with like Micah, a person's friends tells you a lot about them as a person and what they value as well, because people tend to congregate with people who are similar to them in terms of friendships as well. So yeah, I think that's that was a green flag, seeing his friends and how they interacted with Tiffany. They treated her with respect. They didn't have any dodgy bombshells like, Matt's friends had when they told Colleen, like he yells a lot or something like that. Like they just seem really cool and respectful and mature.
One scene I thought was like so heart-wrenching was when Brett finally poured his heart out to Tiffany. It turns out like she was dead asleep on the other side of that wall, which, okay, they're in the pods for a lot of hours.
I've fallen asleep on guys before.
Yeah, I know, me too.
I've fallen asleep on guys before. Like, it happens. Like, when the body's tired, it's tired.
The one thing I've learned from this show is just how sensitive a lot of men are, at least from this particular season anyways, because Brett looked absolutely done after Tiffany didn't respond. He looked so upset. Like he left and he was like, that's it. I was like, wow. I don't know that I would have like assumed the worst, but he probably said something very vulnerable. And since it's, I guess, a little bit harder for men sometimes to, especially a guy like himself who's come from a lot of tragedy, to say something that raw and real, and for the person on the other side of the wall to not respond was probably painful in some respects, because he probably also has that like fear that he'll be rejected because of all of those things. But I liked how they worked through it the next time.
I predict they'll get married. I've not yet seen the final episode, but I definitely think they'll get married. It almost feels like they had to manufacture drama in their relationship for the show, because so far all their spats seem to be quite, minor and not indicative of like a fundamental compatibility issue like some of the other couples.
Yeah, the most drama so far is it just seems like Tiffany's a bit overwhelmed with everything going on in her life, and the wedding is just adding to that.
Yeah, and the falling asleep at the beginning.
Yeah, the falling asleep, of course, was like, inopportune moment, but whatever. I mean, they've said that they're in those pods for hours and hours and hours. So I feel like if you have a little bit to drink and even talking for a long time, doesn't seem odd. And Tiffany's friends seem great and supportive of her as well. So I think that was also like a green flag. Unlike some other people who we'll get to, with them, there's not much to really nitpick about. It seemed like they both went in there knowing to a certain extent what they wanted. They're both stable in who they are. They're both stable in their careers. It didn't seem like they were going there looking for validation from anyone. Again, better than some other people, and seem to have pretty good character. So I think everybody was sort of rooting for them.
Yes.
I can't think of a better couple, right? A better, more likable couple so far. Has there been a more likable couple in Love is Blind so far?
I haven't watched season 1. I haven't seen season 1, but I've heard like Lauren and Cameron, but I haven't seen season 1. So
yeah, they're the other success story. I guess there's been a couple of success stories because technically there's also Amber and Barnett. But the thing is that Amber just comes off really unlikable to people. So people kind of don't root for them as much, even though technically they've been married since the first season as well. But Lauren and Cameron, people still root for them because they're a little bit more, I guess, likable as people, although a little boring. But yeah, and then people don't like Alexa a lot because of her bullying and potty mouth, really. So I feel like Alexa and Brennan haven't really been embraced as like a symbolic Love is Blind couple the way Laura and Cameron were. And now I think Brett and Tiffany are. And then season 2 was like one big dumpster fire, and I don't think anyone's still together. So
no, we're still together.
Yeah. So I think this might be the most successful couple to come out of, at least from so far we see, come out of a season of Love is Blind. Like, neither of them came across badly. The audience seems to both embrace them. They come across like emotionally stable, mature people. They're not perfect, but there's no like tea on them, meaning like no one's like dropping like, oh, this person's a horrible. No one's pulling up domestic violence records like some other contestants had.
Well, fingers crossed.
Oh God, please.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fan favorite couple. I think there's just so many green flags there, just their willingness to be honest with each other. And I think Brett's willingness to be with a woman who's a little bit like really tender and nice, I guess. I sometimes feel like women like Tiffany get taken advantage of a lot because she just seems like she's actually a really sweet person. And it seems like that's a perfect thing for Brett right now in his life. And then for Tiffany, Brett is really, really supportive, right? Like, when she was having anxiety, he just went out of his way to make her feel more comfortable. He took her on the plane trip and also like that really nice dinner when she was having all the anxiety about the wedding, and he held her. Like, that's just all really good stuff,
Yeah. Wholesome.
Happy for them. Real happy for y'all. All that. So are they the only couple that we kind of want to root for? I feel like, okay, so now that we got the healthy couple out of the way, let's go talk about the dumpster fires that was the rest of the cast here.
Let's go. Let's start dumpster firing. So people are saying, I'm going to go on to Zach and Irina / Bliss next, because, or from what I've seen, people are acting like Zach choosing Bliss is some magical love story, but I don't think that is the case at all. Like, I think that Zach doesn't deserve Bliss purely because when they were in the pods, he chose somebody who forgot his birthday over the woman who actually made an effort on his birthday and thought that was a logical decision. Like, dude, you're a lawyer. Like, surely that just doesn't compute to me at all. And then he is backtracking now. Like, I do believe he genuinely likes Bliss, but it's complete horseshit that he's saying that she wasn't second best because he literally got engaged to another woman over her. When that didn't work out, he came crawling back. This is why when guys come back to you, it's not a compliment. Like, most of the time, it's because their first choice didn't work out.
So my interpretation of it was a bit different. I can totally see what you're saying. I thought he was too insecure to date Bliss because he was afraid of her family looking down on him, which her father did, let's be clear. So, like, and that was particularly triggering for him. And then someone like Irina was also from like humble beginnings and a little bit more rough and tumble. So I felt like he thought they would have a little bit more of a connection, or she would accept him for who he was. Personally, I think I'm kind of on the train that I still think Bliss. Yeah, I don't think it was a good idea for her to get back with Zach after he picked Irina. The biggest reason for me is because I don't think you ever want to set it up where like a guy can come back in your life after he's already shown you that emotionally he's going to prefer another pattern that's familiar for him. Because like now I'm looking at this like, well, all of the things that he said he was afraid of with Bliss's family is pretty much exactly what happens. Like Bliss's female relatives seem to be really nice, like her mom and her sister, etc. But then she introduced Zach to her father, and that entire exchange was maybe his worst fear personified. And so the question then becomes like, are you gonna run away? Are you gonna self-sabotage the entire thing? There's just so many like big question marks to me. Like if her father never accepts Zach, like what is that going to do to their relationship?
It's understandable though why the dad was skeptical. Like I would totally get it, partly because of how it played out. But I do think that they are quite well matched as a couple. But I just find this whole, I don't know, it sort of reminds me of like an awful Nollywood story plot. I mean, Nollywood is Nigerian Hollywood. These sorts of plots were like the theme the whole time, like, you know, the wholesome woman who was always nice to him, he overlooks her for the bitch. And then when she's finally done with him, T then gets with the wholesome woman and sees her worth this whole time. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's kind of whack.
And that's the reason why it triggered me. Like, I think as people, they were always better suited. But the fact that Zach literally got engaged to somebody else who he had doubts about as well, I think that's a much bigger problem. Like, I'm not buying this whole, it's such a love story that they ended up together, because he literally chose somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not buying that either. I think that she's like giving a little bit of her power away by entertaining him again. And I honestly wouldn't, because like, again, it's hard to even engage with them as a couple, because in addition to Paul and Micah, where I don't get their emotional connection at all.
Yeah, I don't see how they have any connection. Like, I just don't. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it's just about making her dad mad by like dating beneath her. Is that what I'm thinking? Like, based on the exchange like Bliss had with her father and like what happened with her older sister, who apparently ran away with one of her dad's workers at his company and doesn't speak to her dad anymore, that it might just be about like deliberately choosing men that on some level are not worth it so that she could just piss her dad off. Even though her dad seems like a very controlling boomer type dad, and I don't blame her for wanting to tell him to buzz off. I'm getting less like I love this particular person and more like I'm with Zach because I feel like I have something to prove to my father.
It'll be interesting to see how that relationship plays out. I think they will probably get married, but it'll be interesting to see if, like Rose said, Zach's insecurities and the lack of acceptance from Bliss's dad ends up being a bigger problem in their relationship down the line.
Yeah. Plus, the other thing I didn't like about Zach was like all the stupid questions he had at the beginning, like, oh, I'm a stripper, or he was like making up stupid scenarios.
Was he?
And they weren't even funny. Yeah. Remember like at the beginning of the pods, like,
oh, yeah.
And like, I just kind of feel like that speaks to his inability to, like, he's just not emotionally in a place where he can just be honest about himself and his struggles without like trying to like test people. You know what I mean? Even if it's like a stupid test. Like, I just thought that whole exchange was really immature. Like, again, like I get why he's the way he is. Like, he grew up very poor. He had a lot of housing instability. His mother was a sex worker, and he's probably been judged for that for a lot of reasons and feels very insecure about that. So I get it. But I just feel like the way that he handles it's pretty immature. And I actually, in some respects, think Irina, because she also handles a lot of her insecurities in a very immature way, is probably why they are more equally yoked. And I think if there was more physical attraction between them, then I don't necessarily think he would have gone for Bliss. I think you're right in the sense of like, I don't think Bliss should have accepted Zach back in any way, shape, or form. And that emotionally, I think that he's actually probably more on Irina's level. It's just there wasn't enough physical attraction between the two to justify it to keep going. And you could just kind of see that from like the moment they met. Like when they met each other in the first reveal, it did not look like either of them were into each other physically.
To be fair, Irina had a good point. Zach's stare is like that serial killer stare. It is so intense. Like the way he stares, that would make me feel uncomfortable. So, I mean, she was a bit rude about it, but she did sort of have a point. Like, his stare is quite intense, and he kept doing it as well.
Yeah, he's intense, right? Like, he has issues. And I think that's why I'm kind of wondering why Bliss wants to take him on as a project. But I think Irina also has issues. Like, she talked about her acne and being bullied and coming from Russia and not having, being able to fit in. And so I feel like the way that she deals with her insecurities is very much the same way, where she kind of deflects and attacks and like tries to test people. And so I can see just watching them, both of their behavior. I'm like, oh, I see why they connected, because in some ways they're like, they have equally toxic coping mechanisms for their trauma. Yeah, I don't think Bliss should settle for Zach. There's nothing there for me to be like, oh, this is totally something that's worth your time. I don't get it. But okay, so what did you think of the Irina Bliss, Irina Paul, Irina Zach drama? Because Irina was in the middle of some mess.
When she said that she fancied Paul.
Yeah, so in the beginning in the pods, Micah and Irina became BFFs, and they were a lot of times making fun of the other girls on the show.
I didn't understand that. I thought that was really, really bitchy and unnecessary. Especially when I think it was Bliss who was crying. Was it Amber? Actually, Amber was upset that Paul didn't choose her, and Irina was like eavesdropping and giggling. I just thought, what the fuck?
Yeah. And then her being really passive aggressive to Bliss about the birthday candles. and then deciding she doesn't like Zach, so she wants to go after Paul and flirt with Paul. And I'm like, oh, Irina's the type of girl, in my opinion, anyways, is that I think she just wants to feel like she could take a guy from another girl, even if she doesn't actually want that guy. Well, first of all, she's in this competition with Bliss for Zach. She doesn't even want Zach when they meet each other. Now she's in an imaginary competition with Micah for Paul. And Paul doesn't want Irina. So it's like Irina just is kind of messy. Like I feel like she's a person, once again, horrible way of dealing with her insecurities. And now the way she deals with her insecurities, she tries to feel like she's superior to other women, and she only wants that guy insofar as like he's unavailable and she feels like she could take him. That's my impression of her.
I mean, obviously there is, I'll caveat and say there's probably a lot that isn't aired in terms of the footage. But when she was like, I was really attracted to Paul in the confessionals and to Zach, I remember thinking, but I don't think he feels the same way. You know, she was saying it like almost like it's a reciprocal thing. Like there's a connection with me and Paul. And I don't think he said or he felt the same. So I found that a bit strange.
Exactly. Yeah. She was making it seem like it was a given. Like, again, I think she just likes needling other women. I think that's just like a thing she has because she's insecure. I mean, Chelsea clocked her a little bit. Remember? That's when I actually started to like Chelsea, is when she clocked. And when she clocked Micah and Irina and was like, yeah, sometimes people sit around talking shit because they're real insecure. Like, I was like, bam, you said it. So, yeah, I mean, I think she kind of got the ending in the edit she deserved.
I do think it was right that I don't think she should have ever accepted Zach's proposal, to be honest. I'm not really sure why, because like, you know, like, I think she's one of those contestants. Every season has that contestant where it's like, you are just not a fit for the show. Like, why would you go on it? Like, have you not seen how the show works? And I think that Irina is one of those people. I think she has a type, and that's fine. But then the show's not for you if you have a particular type and you will go and you're only interested in pursuing a relationship with that type. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I don't see the point in you being on the show.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean in the sense of like, yes, the experiment is called Love is Blind, and ideally everybody sees with their heart and not their eyes. But truthfully, this happens every season where a couple meets and they just don't have a physical chemistry and there's nothing that can be done about that. So I'm not even like really, I don't get mad at the contestants who realize like this just isn't right. It's all in how they handle it from there, right? And I think with her, like she kept her distance for a while. And okay, and to be fair to them, I know they kind of forced them to go to Mexico once they get engaged. So I'm serious. Like, I don't like how women, especially because like it feels very rapey to be like, you have to have sex while you're on vacation if you're not physically attracted to that person. Right. So I know the pressure. Remember, they only know each other like a week or so before they go to Mexico. And so they go to Mexico and they're supposed to be like, quote, exploring their physical chemistry. But if you know from jump when you saw the person, like, oh, I don't want to fuck this person. I feel like it's just kind of a messed up thing for the women, you know, because now it's just like a horny guy that you're stuck in a hotel room with that you don't want to have sex with. And so that's how they ended up being on opposite sides of the bed.
Yeah.
For the entire vacation. And then when they finally just both admitted like they weren't into each other, it was like this toxic cloud fume like diffused, because then they were just both like negging each other.
Yeah, and that was probably like the most they'd spoken during the whole holiday after they decided it was over.
He's like, yeah, I don't like how you look at all. She's like, yeah, you're just not my type. And then they were just going back and forth like that. And I was like, yeah, that's like the most, I feel like that was under the surface the whole time. And then once they spoke it, they could just get it all out. And then
they just get it all out. Yeah.
Part ways. Cause she was like, I don't even think we should sit together on the plane ride home. And I was like, well, damn, like she's not.
Yeah, she was done.
Which, okay, I get it. I don't like this aspect of the show. There's got to be a way, if you're not sexually attracted to your partner as a woman, like they should not be trying to force you or press you to have sex with someone against your will.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's just everything else about her personality besides that was the problem, but not really that she didn't want to have sex with Zach, because whatever. But yeah, if I was Bliss, would have sent him backpacking. So there's not really much to say about them that makes me feel inspired by Bliss and Zach as a couple.
And again, I think they're well suited, but I just really, really don't like the origin of their story. And I think that Bliss deserves better. It almost gave me, it's not as bad, I don't think, but it almost took me back to season 2 with Jared and Iyanna. When Jared proposed to Mallory, she blew him off and then he went back to Iyanna literally straight after and proposed. It's just like, I just don't think any woman, especially a woman like Bliss or any woman really, deserves to be humiliated that way, in the sense that he literally chose somebody else over you, despite you clearly giving more of a shit about him.
And then the way he tried to like talk her out of it was like not romantic at all, right? It wasn't even like he was like, oh, let me show you how much I feel for you. It was like, well, you shouldn't feel offended by that. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it was very much, he went back into that lawyer speak, isn't it? You know, when they like...
Yes, that's it.
On technicalities, like, okay, do you know what I mean? That was when I was like, yeah, you're a dickhead. Because everyone was like, oh yeah, he made a mistake, he knew it. And I was like, no, he didn't. He basically tried to manipulate her into believing that she wasn't his second choice, when that's exactly what she was, because his first choice didn't work out. I don't see, like, if Irina had worked out, I don't see Zach going back to Bliss, because it's not like he had doubts about Irina as a person, but he just didn't like the fact that Irina wasn't making an effort. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. He just didn't like that they weren't getting physical. So I think if the physical chemistry had been there, then he probably would not have gone back to Bliss.
Do you remember when Zach was like trying to make out like, if she doesn't start putting in effort, I'm going to walk away? As if like...
Oh my God.
It's like, mate.
He's lame. I'm not a fan of this guy at all.
Yeah, scurry.
Yeah, and it's not because he has the background he has. It's 100% his current personality. That's that couple. Next on the list is Irina's BFF, Micah, and her man, Paul.
Ooh.
But really the Micah, Paul, Kwame love triangle.
Kwame. It's Kwame. It's not Kwame.
It's not Kwame? Kwame?
It's not Kwame. Like, it's supposed... It's a Ghanaian name. Like, it would normally... Well, by people in the Western world, it would be Kwame. That's the proper pronunciation. I'm not sure what... Because, like, Kwame sounds better than Kwame.
I see.
Surely.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he just Americanized it because people probably just kept calling him Kwame, and he has like self-hate issues, clearly.
Well, no, he wanted to be called Alex, so there's clear self-hate.
Oh, right.
There.
Oh, God. Okay. Let's pull over.
Alex, do you remember?
Yes, I am tired. I'm tired of these men of color who come on the show who hate themselves and their culture and do everything to embarrass themselves and their culture with their like constant approval seeking antics and like disregard of women of their own culture to like, I don't know, to just chase after white women and then cry when they get rejected. It's just like top tier embarrassing for them, really. But I need them to find some dignity like real quick.
But the thing is, I don't think they care about dignity. They just want to date a particular type of woman. And usually these men of color, they're after white women in particular. So Sheikh, SK, Kwame.
Yeah, it was Sheikh, SK, Kwame. There's always one. But my thing is like, these guys think it's because of their race. It doesn't occur to them. It's like, no, it's because you're medium ugly. It's because you're ugly, bro. Like, it's not like, it's always the guys crying about like racial bias that someone just needs to pull them aside and be like, no, it's actually just because you're ugly, bro. Like, you're having trouble not because stop projecting your ugly problems on everybody else. But I just feel like watching both of them and Sheikh and like their entire behavior is just like, I don't know why they keep finding this type of man to put on the show maybe they purposely seek out reality TV, because actually the tea was spilled that Kwame actually tried out for Married at First Sight and was rejected from that show. So these guys just have like deep seated issues with their culture and race. And it's just like, you know what I mean? It just gets a lot of secondhand cringe, like watching them like literally crying because like they're not getting enough dates from white women. Like, I don't know what to say about it.
So Kwame's rationale for choosing Chelsea was odd to me, because it seemed like, stemming from his insecurities about possibly being a black man and not getting the sorts of white women that he wanted, it was like, I need her to tell me that she wants me, sort of thing. And Chelsea was happy to do that. Yeah,
Chelsea's really into him. And once again, I don't get it, because Kwame just isn't very affectionate towards her, and he's pretty borderline rude. And I mean, not even borderline. He's very rude towards her. And the entire conversation he had with Micah, where he was clearly still emotionally hanging off Micah's every word, inappropriate.
I think for me, that was even worse than the situation with Bartice and Raven. Not even because Raven shut Bartice down, but I think at least we're basically like awarding a rabid dog with a scrap here, but at least like Bartice seemed somewhat aware that there wasn't a chance with Raven. He was just chatting shit and slightly trying to shoot his shot, but also knew that the ship had sailed, right? Somewhat. But yeah, Kwame was it was almost like he was happy to continue having that connection with Micah. And he never once shut, Micah down when she was like, I still love you, I still care about you, all that stuff. Like, yeah, snake behavior. Absolute wasteman behavior.
Yeah, and she made sort of an off-color joke about here's to failed engagement, which clearly triggered him.
Yeah. He took it to the depths of his soul. Which
I actually thought was hilarious. I died. Micah's defense, I probably would have said some shit like that too.
And again, like, surely, like, that should have been a sign that this woman, you might really like her, but she doesn't rate you in the same way, and that's fine, But he took it to the depths of his soul and had, like, tried to have a couples meeting about it. She literally didn't care.
Exactly, and she don't care, right? Like, she was totally amused by the entire situation and just loving the attention, but she doesn't care about Kwame. She just wants to keep him in the hook because she likes having a dramatic storyline and likes attention, more or less. But I just thought, listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with him being disappointed that he didn't get chosen in the pods and like crying because he thought they had a connection. It was like a little much, but it was interesting just to see like his like inability to let it go or complete disregard of Chelsea. At that point, I feel like he proposed to Chelsea to stay on the show, and he's just a clout chaser that wants to be on TV. I don't think his connection with Chelsea's real. I think Chelsea thinks it's real, but I think he's just going through the motions and doing the barest of minimums of what he has to do in order to keep being on TV.
Yeah, he's not into her. And it's a shame because Chelsea, even though I think she can be quite intense and a bit passive aggressive, but she does seem to be in for the experiment, and to really be serious about finding marriage and stuff like that. And she's just shacked up with a guy who just isn't into her in the same way. So
once again, cuter than him. He's so medium ugly to me. Like, maybe not even medium ugly. Like, I think she's just like looks wise actually more attractive to him.
I think even aside from looks, his whole personality and his outlook, like, because I know that some people of color choose to anglicize their names for pronunciation, but I generally find that quite off-putting, especially if it's something quite subtle, like, Kwame versus Kwame. Like, why wouldn't you just, do you know what I mean? I would find that off-putting personally. And I just think, are you ashamed of your culture, or do you hate yourself? Something like that.
I mean, he clearly is, right? That's what's sort of off-putting about him. I feel for him coming from a very like similarly religious, strict background that you can go through a period where you just kind of want to distance yourself from certain ways of how you were brought up. Yeah, it does seem like he just doesn't have any like dignity or something, right? I don't know. It doesn't mean you have to like embrace everything about your culture, but it's one thing to go from humble beginnings and still have like a sense of your own self pride and not be begging for
validation.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the difference between how Brett deals with his upbringing and his trauma and his poverty versus the way that Kwame and Zach do. And you can kind of just see the difference in the healthy coping mechanism for it, or the healthy way to express it, versus these other two guys who just seem like they're begging for a lot of validation, which kind of understandable given where they come from. But then I think what makes it so off-putting is like the emotional intensity behind it. You know what I mean? Behind the like desperation for validation from these people.
It is sad in a way that they feel this way, but at the same time, it's like, that's definitely, and I would say to any person of color, that's definitely something I would advise you unpack before you start dating people. Because if you go in with this sort of inferiority complex, you are going to have a bad time dating. 100% guaranteed. Especially if it's around your skin color or your background or your heritage. And you could potentially also hurt a lot of people in the meantime, like Kwame is doing to Chelsea.
I peg Kwame as a cheater too. I think he's going to cheat on Chelsea. That's just my like.
I think it's another SK.
Because you could just see his whole body language is just...
He's technically cheated already though, at least emotionally, because he's still like into Micah, openly into her.
I think he's just looking for an opportunity and an exit. I think he wants to look like a nice guy on TV and stay on TV, and that at the first opportunity, he's going to bounce, which makes me feel bad for Chelsea. But Chelsea was forcing this relationship.
Yeah, she was quite intense sometimes, especially when they were talking about incompatibilities. And she basically said, oh, well, we've got marriage to, like basically like when we get married, we'll get over it. And it's like, no. That's not, marriage isn't the band-aid for every issue or argument or compatibility talk that you have. Like, you talk about these things prior to marriage, but it seems like, I don't know if it's because I'm not sure if she said that because she's just trying to get him down the aisle because she senses that maybe he's not into it. So she's trying to lock him down with marriage. I don't know if that's why she's saying that, but yeah, that's not a way to see marriage. It's not a case of, oh, we'll figure it out when we get married. We've got marriage to figure that out, when it's like, you need to figure that out before. Otherwise, you won't be married for very long.
For sure. And I think because she doesn't feel secure in that relationship, and she shouldn't, that sometimes she does things that are a bit passive aggressive, where she tries to like force compliments. She tries to force feed him compliments to say to her. And she did that a bunch of times in a few of the scenes where they're out, like when they were at the suit fitting shop and shopping, like she kept trying to force compliments out of Kwame that he wasn't just freely giving her. And I think that's just insecurity.
I mean, she's making a lot of bids for attention, and because this is in the Gottman Institute, right? And this is one of the ways in which they can tell if a marriage or a relationship is going to be successful long term. So in a normal relationship, couples make bids for attention all the time. So it could be like, hey, I've had a bad day, bid for attention. Oh, hey, look at this TV show. Hey, I'm going out. And these are all like subtle cues that you want your partner to engage with you emotionally. And the more successful relationships, partners respond to bids of attention because they recognize that their partner is trying to connect with them in some way, right? But the bids of attention that I see that Chelsea is like throwing out to Kwame, it seems like he misses all of them. And that's a key sign that he's just not invested in the relationship because
he doesn't care.
He doesn't care, exactly. So he's not invested. So in a relationship where two people are invested, they'll turn towards each other, almost like Brett and Tiffany do. Like they turn towards each other. Whereas when in Kwame and Chelsea's relationship, he turns away from her or shuts her down as being passive aggressive or intense or rude or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just that they're fundamentally incompatible. He's, for whatever reason, hung up on Micah. And I don't know. I feel bad. I feel like Chelsea's going to get her heart broken, and it makes me kind of sad because I don't think he's a good dude. I don't think he's like an actively horrible dude, but I also don't think I think he's like extremely self-interested and self-serving. And combine that with like the level of insecurity he has, it's going to be difficult for him to be in a relationship with someone. So yeah, I don't like him for her. I hope Chelsea moves on to someone better. Which brings us to Micah and Paul, who I just don't get as a couple.
I don't get it. I don't see what they had in common. I don't see it at all.
I literally cannot tell why these two like each other. So I don't even know how to dissect this relationship because...
No, I don't know either.
Most boring couple I've seen in the entire season. Maybe so far in all the seasons, just like a bland couple. I have no idea why they're into each other. And big fat question mark about their emotional profile. Because I'm like, he admittedly says he's an environmental scientist. He mostly dates women who are way more earthy, more into like, he said, what do you call them? Witchcraft? Or he liked women who were witches, like brewing their own kombucha. They have their own gardens.
Yeah, into yoga. I can definitely see like him dating that sort of woman for sure.
So what does he have in common with Micah? I don't even know what to say about Micah. Once again, I don't get the obsession with her.
I don't think she's into him that much either.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I don't know if she's, once again, if she just wants to be on television, just wants to get that blue check on Instagram, you know, why she's going through with it with these guys. Like, they didn't have a moment where you felt like, oh, they're totally emotionally connecting. And even Paul kept saying things like, oh, she thinks the same that I do about life and et cetera. And I'm like, I feel like she's the type of person that would just say whatever the guy wants to hear. She just wants to be wanted.
Just to dangle the carrot. And her friends, oh my gosh, her friends, wow.
Yeah, her friends were different. I mean, I don't know. I think they're not going to make it down the aisle because you could tell Paul got the ick after meeting her friends. Like he could see physically, like visibly, like he left. And then she was like, well, why don't you care what they think? And he's like, I just don't. But meaning like he doesn't respect her friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, again, it was edited, but I just feel like it was a bit... I'm not sure how she came to the conclusion that Paul wasn't right for Micah, unless she knows the sort of drama that Micah likes to tangle herself in, possibly. But yeah, I just got really, really bad vibes from Micah's friends. But then again, it's like, if you look at how she treated other women in the pods, it sort of checks out, to be honest.
Yeah, I think she just seems really shallow, more or less. And I bet her friends were kind of hinting at that, like, oh, I don't like him for... Because, like, I mean, again, with Paul, like, he seems like he wants an emotional connection with someone, but I just don't see a lot of emotional depth from Micah at all. So that's why I'm just kind of confused.
No, I don't.
I'm confused at, like, why they're together. And maybe there was some and it just wasn't shown. But, I mean, they definitely framed her as a more, like, manipulative person, her and Irina. And a more like, oh, I just want all the guys here to want me vibe. So, which whatever. I mean, far be it for me to like tell these women they can't get their 15 minutes, I suppose. But it does make it hard to dissect because it doesn't feel, nothing about it feels genuine. Where some of the other couples, you can tell that they were in the experiment and it felt genuine. It just doesn't feel genuine coming from Micah. Like, does she actually want to be married? I don't know.
I don't think she does, to be honest. Or at least she doesn't want to be married to any of the guys in the pods anyway. So, yeah, I don't even know what to say about that couple as well. I don't think they'll get married. They shouldn't get married. Paul should go and find his kombucha making, yoga twisting other half, earthy other half.
Which brings us to the last couple.
Man. Well, couples, technically.
Love triangle.
Yeah.
Jackie and Marshall, and then Jackie and Josh. Listen.
Oh, man.
I knew Jackie and Marshall were not going to work out from the pod conversation. And then it was solidified to me when she saw him in person. I was like, oh, she's not into him sexually. It's never going to work. He's shorter than she usually dates. Anything about this man, like one day he's going to do something that annoys her and she's going to blow up all over him because she's not sexually attracted to him.
Isn't that basically what she did though? When she said like, basically you're not man enough and we don't even have sex and whatever. Basically did that.
And I think it's easy to overfocus on her because like she wears all her issues. She just doesn't have the most emotionally mature way of dealing with her problems. But like Marshall's also like a very much a nice guy trademark, quote, quote.
Yeah, he was.
He kind of icked me out too, to be honest. Like, I don't think he's a horrible guy, but I think he's like emotionally codependent and manipulative.
And then the way he was like, tell me what I need to do to make this work. And I thought at this point, he knew that, you know, that she wasn't feeling it as well. But he kept on asking that question, which I thought was a bit strange, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I just looked at it from jump and I was like, oh, she's going to bail. She's not into him. This is where it gets weird because I feel like she tried to make it work because she knew Marshall would probably be much different than the guys she normally dates who are clearly emotionally unavailable, admittedly so. So her trying to engage with Marshall was like her trying to throw herself in this experiment, but ultimately she wasn't physically attracted to him. So like, I don't think it ever would have gone anywhere off that alone. And so I think where it got weird and toxic was just, I think Marshall just kept trying to hang on and emotionally connect with her. And she's not a person that can articulate her feelings in a way that's very, I don't know how to explain it. Like she's not emotionally articulate. So like Marshall continuously trying to engage with her in a way that's a little bit more emotionally articulate was never going to work because she doesn't have the depth of that kind of knowledge or experience of telling people those types of things. And you could tell like the way that she talked about other people, like calling Irina a peasant and all this kind of stuff. Like she's kind of a mean girl too. You know what I mean? I mean, but also fair. Irina was kind of a, like, kind of terrible to other women. So whatever. Like, yeah, she straight up called Irina a peasant.
I'm laughing. I mean, not that, but I swear that's like an African American / African insult because my dad calls people he doesn't like. He calls them peasants as well.
Peasant.
I think that's definitely African vernacular for someone
yeah,
you don't like.
Worldwide African vernacular for this person is beneath me. Peasant.
Even if that person is earning more than you, if you don't like them, just call them a peasant.
Emotional peasant. Yeah, she's just not very emotionally articulate. And so Marshall keeps trying to engage with her in a level that she can't. So it just was never going to work, right? I think that was, the emotional connection they made with the pods. Like, I think it was very new for her. And she said that. She's like, I've never had a guy cook for me. I've never had a guy engage with me or like break down my walls or talk to me like this. And so all this is very new to her. And I think Marshall wants to have these like sophisticated therapist-led conversations with her that she just cannot do.
Yeah. And I think Josh as well. Oh, that was
also an emotional peasant. But that's what I'm saying. I think they were actually kind of equally yoked. When I saw Josh and when I saw Marshall, I was like, oh, she's going to regret picking Marshall. Because Josh is like probably her more emotional type pattern, as well as, I don't know if I'd call him more physically attractive than Marshall, but he has a better hairline. That's for sure. And he dresses nicer.
I mean, when I saw Josh, I was like, okay, this guy's mid, I think. He's not anything like, yeah, he's mid. I wouldn't say he's substantially more attractive than Marshall, personally, but clearly Jackie thought otherwise.
So Josh is actually, the other thing too is Josh is an athlete. So she says she normally dates like tall, tatted up athlete types. So Josh is like apparently
I see.
Trained in MMA and jiu-jitsu. So physically I was like, oh yeah, she's like, that's the guy that she wants to be with.
But there's some like tea in terms of the editing. So Jackie's been on social media talking about how she got the villain edit basically because the show, well, basically says that she met up with Josh and almost agreed to give their relationship a go, while she was still with Marshall. So, in that episode where she meets Josh in the cafe and they agree to get together and she kisses him. And then the next scene or a couple scenes after that, she's then telling Marshall that it's over. But Jackie is claiming that the scene in the cafe happened after she'd split up with Marshall and they edited it to make out like she was cheating on Marshall, basically.
Yeah, I figured they would do that. It's for maximum drama. I could see it either way. But either way, I definitely feel like it was good for her to break things off with Marshall. And I think she should have maybe done that even sooner because I think she was trying to give it a go. And then when she was done, she just doesn't have a very mature way of letting a guy down easy. So she picks fights, right? So like, I feel like a lot of those moments were her just like sabotaging the relationship because she didn't want to be in it anymore. So she was just picking fights with him.
And it was really unfair to Marshall, but it was ultimately for the best anyway. And I think that, again, it's just that he was also intense. I mean, not like Chelsea intense, but I think that Marshall was also quite intense in some of the ways that he almost tried to be overtly accommodating. And like you said, it was quite clear that Jackie didn't have the capacity for that, but he kept trying to push it.
I mean, even the beginning when like he was going to fight Josh over Jackie, I was like, this guy is such a clown. Like, first of all, yeah, Josh is an athlete and he would have like definitely put Marshall into the floor. That's just the reality of it.
Tombstone pile driver.
And I know people called him Will Smith on the show, but like it definitely gave the like, keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth moment, like with Marshall, where like he just had all this like pent up emotional dysregulation that he was ready to take out on Josh. But I'm like, don't get yourself embarrassed on television, man. Like it was just like, okay, so on some levels, I guess it's kind of romantic. And I think a lot of women like the idea that a guy would fight for her, right? If he really, really likes her. And I think Jackie also really liked that at first. But then again, it just seems like a guy who's sort of just like emotionally needy, right? And for someone that emotionally needy, he needs someone a lot more emotionally articulate and a lot more emotionally educated than Jackie is. But I think Jackie's beautiful. She's probably the type of girl that he always wishes that he could get with. And so that rejection really hurt because he's into her physically, obviously, but emotionally, like she's not from the type of background to talk to him on the level that he wants. Even she admitted that. She was like, oh, it seems like he's really high class. And I was like, oh man, like I wonder where she comes from if like she thinks like Marshall's high class. Like he's solidly working class to me, but she might not come from much, right?
Yeah. There's not really a judgment call on this couple. It's over, but apparently Josh and Jackie are still together and going strong. So,
Right. So I'm really excited for the reunion because I want to see all the drama.
I wonder if Josh will be there at the reunion.
I would love to see that, to hear the story about Josh and Jackie and see if because the tea is that they're actually living together. So they've been dating since the show aired. Yeah. So it's been working apparently.
Wow. Okay. That's some tea. Oh, wow. Okay.
And what's interesting too is Jackie even says to Josh, and I think this is where she started to be really emotionally honest with herself, where she says to Josh, listen, I can't give you marriage if that's what you're actually looking for, but we can just see where these things go. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a more emotionally honest thing that she said.
That's fair.
Yeah. Because she probably realized oh, wait, being with Marshall and the reality of marriage is actually staring her in the face. And truth be told, Marshall probably would have went through with it if she had actually gone down the aisle. She probably realized maybe I don't want this in my life right now, but she wants to be with someone. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually quite looking forward to this reunion out of all of the season so far. I'm looking forward to this one purely because there's just so many cross relationships, and it will be interesting to see how Chelsea feels about the conversations that, for example, between Micah and Kwame, and how Paul feels about that as well. So yeah, it's going to be a messy one. And I'm here for it, to be honest. I am here for it.
Yeah, a lot of emotionally explosive people. So I'm here for it. I love it when it gets messy.
And will Marshall finally get his WWE match against Josh? Stay tuned.
That man gonna get himself embarrassed, and I'm gonna feel bad because he doesn't deserve it. But yeah, I did like the bromance between Marshall and Brett, though. That was pretty cute. So as far as the friendships on this show, Brett and Marshall, I feel like that was a much healthier relationship than what he had with Jackie. And then on the other hand, you saw that sort of toxic frenemy relationship between Irina and Micah take hold.
Yeah.
And then I don't know the deal with Jackie. Jackie seems like she's just Jackie, I guess. I don't know if she really had a friendship on the show, but her and Chelsea were kind of friends. And then fortunately for Tiffany, she stayed away from the crazy and focused on her relationship. So
yeah, she did. And also, it seems like she's got a solid group of friends anyway. So, yeah, she came into it with good friends, good head on her shoulders. So, yeah, I'm here. I'll be having the popcorn. I think it airs on soon, the reunion. So,
yeah, the reunion is going to air on April 16th. So it should have aired by the time you hear this episode.
Yay. I'm glad they didn't make us wait ages for the reunion like the last time.
Yeah, I'm hyped. All right. So that's our show. Let us know what you think. Check us out on the website, thefemaledatingstrategy.com. Comment on the forum if you want to discuss this episode. Sign up for the forum. Sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/thefemaledatingstrategy. Follow us on Twitter @femdatstrat and on Instagram @_thefemaledatingstrategy. Thanks for listening, queens. And for all you scrotes out there, you're not going to get chose. Die mad.
See you next week.